That free app you downloaded this morning? You didn't pay for it with money. You paid with something way more valuable. And you have no idea how much you just gave away. Think about your phone right now. How many apps do you have installed? 20? 50? Maybe 100? Now think about how many of those you actually paid for. Probably almost none. Most apps are free. Free games, free social media, free productivity tools, free everything. And you probably think that's amazing. Technology companies just giving you all this stuff out of the kindness of their hearts. Except that's not what's happening. Not even close. Every time you use a free app, you're paying. You're paying with your data, your location, your contacts, your browsing history, your face, your voice. Everything about you is being collected, packaged, and sold to the highest bidder. And the companies doing this are making billions. Not millions. Billions. Today, we're exposing the real business model behind free apps. Who's collecting your data, what they're doing with it, how much it's worth, and why you should be absolutely terrified about what's on your phone right now. Because the dark side of free apps is darker than you ever imagined. Let me tell you about a company you've probably never heard of. Kochava. They're a data broker. They collect location data from hundreds of apps on your phone, combine it with other information about you, and sell it to anyone willing to pay. Advertisers, hedge funds, insurance companies, government agencies, anyone. In 2022, the FTC sued them. Not because what they were doing was necessarily illegal under current laws, but because it was so invasive and dangerous that the FTC argued it violated unfair business practices. The lawsuit revealed that Kochava was selling data, showing when people visited abortion clinics, mosques, domestic violence shelters, and addiction treatment centers. They could track individuals to specific locations and times, your most private moments, packaged up and sold. Kochava claimed they anonymized the data, but investigations showed that with just a few data points, you could identify specific individuals. If you know someone visited a particular address at a particular time, you can figure out who they are. Anonymization doesn't really work when the data is that specific. And here's the thing. Kochava didn't hack into phones or do anything technically illegal to get this data. They got it from apps that you downloaded for free. Apps that asked for location permission and you clicked yes without reading what they'd do with it. Every free weather app, free game, free flashlight app, they're collecting your location data constantly and selling it to companies like Kochava. This is the real business model of free apps. You are not the customer. You are the product. The app is free because the company makes money by selling you. Your data, your attention, your behavior. Everything about you has been turned into a commodity. Let's break down how much your data is actually worth because the numbers are wild. The global data broker industry is worth about $250 billion. That's just the data brokers, the middlemen buying and selling data. The total value of the data economy, including advertising and all the downstream uses, is over $3 trillion. $3 trillion. That's bigger than the GDP of most countries. For an individual person, your data is worth somewhere between a few cents to a few $100s, depending on how much information exists about you and how valuable you are as a target. If you're wealthy, your data is worth more. If you're about to make a major purchase decision, your data is worth more. If you have a medical condition that requires expensive treatment, your data is worth more to pharmaceutical and insurance companies. A study by the Financial Times tried to calculate how much major tech companies make per user from data. Facebook makes about $30 to $40 per user per year in the US. Google makes slightly more. TikTok makes less because they're newer and their ad targeting isn't as sophisticated yet. But they're catching up fast. Multiply those numbers by billions of users and you understand why these companies can offer everything for free. Facebook has nearly 3 billion users. If they make $40 per user per year, that's $120 billion in annual revenue from giving away a free app. The economics work when data is the product. But it's not just the big tech companies. There are thousands of smaller apps doing the same thing. That flashlight app you downloaded? It doesn't need to know your location to turn on your phone's light, but it asks for location permission anyway, because location data is valuable. That free game? It doesn't need access to your contacts, but it asks for them because contact lists can be sold. A study by researchers at MIT and other universities analyzed thousands of free apps and found that the average free app shares data with 5 different third-party companies. Some apps share data with over 20 different companies. Most users have no idea this is happening because it's buried in terms of service that nobody reads. And those terms of service, let me tell you about those. They're intentionally written to be impossible to understand. The average terms of service for a free app is longer than Shakespeare's Hamlet, written in legal language that requires a law degree to interpret. And even if you tried to read them, it would take you hundreds of hours to read the terms of service for all the apps on your phone. There was a study that calculated if you actually read the privacy policies for all the websites and apps the average person uses, it would take 76 full workdays per year. Nobody has that kind of time. So we all just click, I agree, without reading. And companies know this. They count on it. They bury the most invasive stuff in the middle of page 47, written in confusing language, knowing nobody will ever read it. Let me give you some examples of what apps are collecting. Location data is the obvious one. Apps track where you go, when you go there, how long you stay, and where you go next. They build a complete map of your daily routine. They know where you live, where you work, where you shop, where you eat, where you worship, who you visit. Contact lists are another big one. Apps ask to access your contacts, then upload everyone's phone numbers and email addresses to their servers. Now they have information about you and everyone you know. They can build social graphs showing who's connected to whom. This information is incredibly valuable for advertisers and others. Photos and videos are gold mines. Apps that ask for access to your photos aren't just looking at the pictures, they're reading the metadata. Where the photo was taken, when it was taken, what device was used, and increasingly, they're using AI to analyze what's in the photos. Are you at a restaurant? What brand of clothes are you wearing? Are you with other people? All of this generates data that gets fed into profiles about you. Microphone access is terrifying. Apps that have microphone permission can theoretically listen to you all the time. Companies claim they don't do this, that they only use the microphone when you're actively using the app. But there have been multiple instances where people noticed ads for things they only talked about, never searched for. The companies deny it, but the evidence keeps piling up. Facebook got caught a few years ago admitting they listened to ambient audio to understand what you were watching on TV so they can serve you better ads. They called it helping improve your experience. Most people would call it surveillance. Camera access is another nightmare. Apps with camera permission could theoretically see what you're doing anytime. They say they don't. But again, the technical capability exists. And we're trusting companies with massive financial incentives to collect as much data as possible to voluntarily restrain themselves. Then, there's the stuff you might not think about. Apps can access your device's sensor data, accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer. This data can reveal incredibly personal information. Researchers have shown they can determine your emotional state based on how you move your phone. They can tell if you're nervous, excited, depressed, all from sensor data. Apps can see what other apps you have installed. This reveals a ton about you. Dating apps, you're single, pregnancy apps, you're expecting, gambling apps. You might have an addiction. Medical apps, you might have health issues. All of this information gets collected and sold. Apps track how you use them, how long you spend on each screen, what you click on, what you ignore, how fast you scroll. All of this behavioral data gets analyzed to build psychological profiles. They're figuring out what makes you click, what keeps you engaged, what triggers emotional responses. It's like having a psychologist studying you constantly. And the scariest part? All this data from different apps gets combined. Data brokers buy information from hundreds of sources and merge it into comprehensive profiles. They know more about you than your family does, more than you probably know about yourself, because they're analyzing patterns you don't even notice. Axiom, one of the biggest data brokers, claims to have information on 700 million people worldwide. They have over 5,000 data points on most Americans. 5,000. That's not just your name and address. That's your income, your debts, your shopping habits, your medical history, your political views, your religion, your hobbies, your fears, your desires, everything. And they sell this information, not to hackers or criminals, but to legitimate businesses. Your bank might buy data about you before approving a loan. Your employer might buy data about you before hiring. Your insurance company might buy data about you before setting your rates. And you have no idea this is happening because it's all behind the scenes. Let's talk about specific apps and what they're doing. TikTok has been in the news a lot for data collection, and they deserve it. Their app collects an insane amount of data. Location, contacts, device information, browsing history from other apps on your phone, keystroke patterns that could theoretically be used to figure out passwords. They know what you watch, when you watch it, how long you watch it, what you search for, what you like, what you share, and all that data goes back to ByteDance, TikTok's parent company in China, which means the Chinese government could potentially access it. TikTok denies they share data with the Chinese government, but under Chinese law, companies have to comply with government data requests. So the possibility exists. The US government got so worried about this that they tried to ban TikTok. The ban hasn't happened yet because of legal challenges, but the fact that the government is taking it seriously tells you how big the threat is. They're not worried about the app being entertaining. They're worried about a foreign adversary having detailed information on hundreds of millions of Americans. But here's the hypocritical part. American apps are doing similar things. Facebook has been caught multiple times doing shady stuff with data. Cambridge Analytica was the big scandal. A political consulting firm got data on 87 million Facebook users without their consent and used it to target political ads. Facebook claimed they didn't know, but investigations showed Facebook was way too loose with how they let third parties access user data. Google tracks you across the entire internet. Every website with Google Analytics, which is most websites, sends information about your visit to Google. They know what sites you visit, what you search for, what you click on, what you buy. They read your emails in Gmail to serve you targeted ads. They track your location through Google Maps. They know what videos you watch on YouTube. They have a comprehensive view of your entire digital life. Apple positions themselves as the privacy-friendly option, and to their credit, they've implemented some better protections than Android. But they're not perfect. Apps on iOS still collect tons of data. Apple just makes it slightly harder and requires apps to ask permission more explicitly. But most people still click yes because they want to use the app. And Apple itself collects data too. Maybe not as much as Google or Facebook, but they're tracking what apps you download, what you buy, what you search for. They claim they anonymize it and don't sell it to third parties, which is better than the alternative. But it's still data collection happening without most users fully understanding it. Gaming apps are particularly bad. Free-to-play mobile games are some of the worst offenders for data collection. They need to keep you hooked, so you'll make in-app purchases. So they're constantly analyzing your behavior to figure out how to manipulate you, when to show you ads, when to offer you deals, how to make you feel like you're almost winning so you'll pay for an advantage. These games collect data on how you play, how much time you spend, how much money you spend, what you spend it on, when you're most likely to spend. They build psychological profiles to maximize revenue from each player, and then they sell that behavioral data to other companies. Dating apps are a privacy nightmare. Think about what you tell a dating app: your age, height, weight, photos, where you live, where you work, what you're looking for in a partner, your sexual orientation, your religion, your politics. That's incredibly sensitive information, and dating apps have been caught sharing it with advertising partners. In 2020, a Norwegian consumer group did an investigation into dating apps. They found that Grindr, OkCupid, and Tinder were all sharing sensitive user data with advertising companies. Grindr was sharing users' HIV status and last tested date with third parties. That's medical information being shared without proper consent. The backlash was huge, and they supposedly stopped. But the fact that it happened at all shows how little these companies care about privacy. Health and fitness apps are concerning too. Apps that track your steps, your workouts, your sleep, your diet. They have access to really personal health information, and many of them share that data with third parties. Your insurance company would love to know if you're exercising regularly or eating terribly. Your employer might want to know if you're sleeping well or stressed out. Strava, a popular fitness app, caused a major security incident a few years ago. They published a heat map showing where their users exercised. Sounds harmless. Except it revealed the locations of secret military bases because soldiers were using the app while deployed. You could see the outlines of bases in Iraq and Afghanistan because that's where soldiers were jogging. The military freaked out and banned the app, but it showed how location data can reveal things that are supposed to be secret. Let's talk about kids, because this gets even darker. There are thousands of apps targeted at children, games, educational apps, videos. And these apps are collecting data on kids, where they go, what they like, how they behave. All of this information is being used to build profiles on children that will follow them for their entire lives. There are supposed to be laws protecting kids. COPPA in the US requires parental consent before collecting data on children under 13. But enforcement is weak, and many apps just ignore it. A study by the FTC found that a majority of apps targeted at kids were collecting data without proper parental consent. And even when apps comply with the letter of the law, the spirit is being violated. Kids are being tracked, profiled, and targeted from the moment they can hold a phone. Companies are figuring out what manipulates children, what keeps them glued to screens, what makes them beg their parents for in-app purchases. It's predatory. YouTube got fined $170 million in 2019 for collecting data on kids watching YouTube without parental consent. $170 million sounds like a lot, but YouTube makes that much in a few days. So it's really just a cost of doing business. The fine didn't change their behavior much. Now let's talk about what happens with all this data once it's collected. The first use is advertising. That's the main revenue source for most free apps. They collect data about you, build a profile, then sell access to that profile to advertisers. The advertisers don't get your personal information directly. They just get the ability to target ads at people matching certain criteria. Show this ad to 30-year-old men in Los Angeles who like sports and visited a car dealership recently. The app knows who matches that profile and shows them the ad. This is called targeted advertising, and it's incredibly effective. Traditional advertising is like throwing darts blindfolded. You put an ad on TV and hope the right people see it. Targeted advertising is like having a laser-guided missile. You hit exactly the people most likely to buy your product. So advertisers pay a premium for it. But data is used for way more than just ads. Insurance companies buy data to assess risk. They want to know if you're a safe driver before selling you car insurance, if you're healthy before selling you life insurance. Data brokers sell them information about your purchasing habits, your location history, everything that might indicate risk. There have been cases of people being denied insurance or charged higher rates because of data collected from apps. If your fitness app shows you're not exercising, your health insurance might cost more. If your driving app shows you speed or drive late at night, your car insurance goes up. Companies call this risk-based pricing. Critics call it discrimination. Employers use data too. Before hiring, some companies buy background reports that include social media activity, purchasing history, even what neighborhoods you visit. They're trying to assess if you'll be a good employee, but they're making judgments based on data you never consented to share with them. Landlords use data to screen tenants. Banks use it to approve loans. Schools use it to evaluate applicants. Your data is being used to make decisions about your life by people who've never met you, based on information you didn't know was being collected. And then, there's the government. Law enforcement agencies buy data from data brokers to track people without warrants. Normally, if police want to track your location, they need a warrant. But if they buy your location data from a data broker who got it from an app, no warrant needed. It's a massive loophole in privacy protections. Immigration enforcement has used this. They bought location data to find undocumented immigrants. The military has used it. The Pentagon bought location data to track people in other countries. Intelligence agencies use it. The whole apparatus of government surveillance has figured out they can bypass constitutional protections by just buying data from private companies. This should terrify you. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches, but if you consented by clicking, "I agree," on an app's terms of service, the government argues they can buy that data without a warrant. Courts are still figuring out if this is legal, but in the meantime, it's happening. So here's the problem. The entire economy of the internet is built on data collection. Free apps exist because collecting and selling your data is profitable. If we tried to stop data collection entirely, most free services would disappear. You'd have to pay for everything. Facebook? That'll be $10 a month. Google? Subscription fee. Every app, every website, all requiring payment. Most people don't want that. We like free stuff. We've gotten used to not paying for apps and services, and companies know this. So they've built a system where the price is hidden. You pay with your data instead of your wallet. And because you don't see the transaction happening, it feels free. But it's not free. It's very expensive. You're just paying with something that's harder to value than money. Your privacy, your autonomy, your ability to move through the world without being constantly watched and analyzed. Those things have value. You just don't realize how much until they're gone. The challenge is figuring out how to create a sustainable model for apps and services that doesn't require selling user data. Some companies are trying subscription models. Pay a fee and they don't collect your data. But these haven't caught on widely because people are conditioned to expect things for free. There's also the problem of market dominance. Even if you wanted to pay for privacy-respecting alternatives, they often don't exist. Facebook has a monopoly on social networking. Google has a monopoly on search. If you want to use these services, you have to accept their data collection. You don't have real choices. And even when alternatives exist, they're often inferior. Privacy-respecting apps usually have fewer features, worse design, smaller user bases, because they don't have the revenue from data sales to fund development. It's a catch-22. People want privacy, but they also want good products. And right now, those two things are often mutually exclusive. Different approaches have been tried. Europe's GDPR was supposed to fix this. It's a law requiring companies to get explicit consent before collecting data and giving users the right to see and delete their data. It's better than nothing, but it hasn't solved the problem. Companies just added cookie banners to their websites and apps. Those annoying pop-ups asking you to accept cookies. Most people just click accept all because they want to use the site. So GDPR added friction, but didn't really change behavior much. Companies are still collecting data. Users are still agreeing to it. California passed a similar law, CCPA. Other US states are following, but enforcement is inconsistent, and penalties are often too small to change corporate behavior. A multi-billion-dollar company isn't scared of $1 million fine. Some people advocate for a data dividend. The idea is that if companies are making money from your data, you should get a cut. Every time your data is sold, you get a micropayment. This would make the value of data visible and give people an incentive to manage their privacy. The problem is implementation. How do you track every time data is bought and sold? How do you distribute billions of micropayments? Who enforces it? The logistics are complicated and nobody's figured out a practical system. Another idea is data ownership. Make it legally clear that your data belongs to you, not the companies collecting it. They can only use it with your explicit, ongoing consent. And you can revoke that consent and force them to delete your data anytime. This sounds good but has problems. Data isn't like physical property. Once it's copied and shared with third parties, you can't really take it back. It's like trying to unpublish a book. Once it's out there, it's out there. So ownership rights might not be practically enforceable. Some people think the solution is breaking up big tech. If Facebook, Google, and Amazon weren't so dominant, maybe competition would force companies to respect privacy to attract users. Smaller companies competing would offer better privacy policies to differentiate themselves. Maybe. But it might also just create more companies doing the same thing. The business model of data collection is so profitable that even if you broke up Facebook, the pieces would probably keep collecting data. You'd just have more companies doing it instead of one big one. Technical solutions have been proposed. Better encryption. Decentralized systems where data stays on your device instead of being uploaded to servers. Differential privacy techniques that let companies analyze aggregate data without collecting individual data. These are all promising but not fully developed or widely adopted yet. Apple has pushed some of these ideas. Their app tracking transparency feature requires apps to ask permission before tracking you across other apps and websites. Most users say no when asked explicitly. This has cost Facebook billions in lost ad revenue. Facebook was furious about it, but Apple isn't doing this purely out of altruism. They're doing it to compete. They want to position themselves as the privacy-friendly option to sell more iPhones. And they're still collecting data themselves. just less than their competitors. It's a competitive strategy, not a principled stand. Google tried to do something similar with their Privacy Sandbox initiative, but it's been delayed, and critics say it's just a way for Google to maintain control over advertising while appearing to care about privacy. They're trying to have it both ways. We're at a turning point. For years, data collection happened in the shadows and most people didn't know or care. But awareness is growing. People are starting to understand that free apps aren't really free, that their data is valuable and being exploited. Major scandals have accelerated this. Cambridge Analytica, the Snowden revelations about government surveillance, data breaches exposing millions of people's information. Each scandal chips away at trust in tech companies. And that loss of trust is dangerous for the companies. Their entire business model depends on users voluntarily using their services and sharing data. If people start deleting apps, using VPNs, lying on forms, or just avoiding free services, the data collection machine breaks down. Tech companies know this. They're trying to balance maximizing data collection with maintaining enough trust that people keep using their services. It's a delicate balance. Push too far and you trigger a backlash. Don't collect enough data and you can't compete. Right now, we're in this weird middle ground where most people sort of know their data is being collected, but don't fully understand the extent or implications. And companies are trying to keep it that way. They want you aware enough to accept the terms of service, but not aware enough to be outraged. But that equilibrium might not last. As more information comes out about what's really happening with data, public opinion could shift dramatically. And when it does, the entire model of free apps supported by data collection could collapse. What replaces it, nobody knows. But the current system isn't sustainable long-term. The dark side of free apps is that they're not really free. Every app you download without paying money, you're paying with something else. Your data, your privacy, your attention, your autonomy. Companies have figured out how to monetize every aspect of your life, and they're making billions doing it. Your location is tracked constantly. Your communications are analyzed. Your behavior is profiled. Your psychology is studied. All of this information is packaged up and sold to whoever wants to buy it. Advertisers, data brokers, insurance companies, employers, governments, anyone with money. And most of this happens without your meaningful consent. Sure, you clicked "I agree" on the terms of service, but you didn't read it. You didn't understand it. You probably didn't even have a real choice because the alternative was not using the app at all. And in many cases, that's not realistic. You need email. You need maps. You need to communicate with people, so you agree to whatever terms the company demands. This has created a massive power imbalance. Companies know everything about you. You know almost nothing about what they're doing with that information. They can use it to manipulate you, to discriminate against you, to exploit you. And you have very little recourse. Some companies are worse than others. Some actually try to minimize data collection and protect user privacy, but many don't. And as a user, it's almost impossible to tell which is which. They all say they care about your privacy in their marketing. They all have privacy policies, but those policies are designed to confuse rather than inform. Regulators are starting to pay attention. Laws are being passed, fines are being levied, but it's not enough. The penalties are too small. The enforcement is too weak. The laws are too easy to work around. Companies are still collecting vast amounts of data and making enormous profits from it. The only real solution is awareness and pressure. If enough people understand what's happening and demand change, companies will have to respond. If people start choosing privacy-respecting alternatives, even if they cost money or have fewer features, the market will shift. If voters demand stronger privacy laws and politicians who don't deliver get voted out, regulations will improve. But that requires you to care, to pay attention, to read articles like this and actually think about what apps you have on your phone and what they're doing. Most people won't. They'll keep using free apps and ignore the cost because it's invisible. And that's what these companies count on. Your apathy, your ignorance, your willingness to trade long-term privacy for short-term convenience. As long as most people keep clicking "I agree" without thinking, the data collection machine will keep running. So the next time you download a free app, ask yourself, what am I really paying here? What is this company getting from me? Is it worth it? Sometimes it might be, but you should at least know what the transaction is, because in the economy of free apps, You're not the customer. You're the product, and your data is the currency. Whether that's acceptable is up to you, but at least now you know what's really happening. What you do with that knowledge is your choice. What you see next will make you want to delete every app on your phone immediately.